Hello everybody, I am Cassidy, I am the HippieCatholic. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe to be part of the conversation. I am here with an amazing progressive Christian channel that I found here on YouTube called Halidom. They come from an evangelical background, but they're also progressive, and I just absolutely love their content, so go check them out. And I'm just really excited to have them both on my channel in this video. So could you guys tell us a bit about yourselves?
Yeah, so we started Halidom a little bit ago, and it's really what I wish that I had when I was younger. We wanted to make like a resource that could help people sort of transition out of more like fundamentalist Christianity into something more like healthy and something more, spiritually fulfilling.
Yeah, I think that's it. We just want to bridge the gap and create a safe space for people.
That's amazing, and because I definitely think that there needs to be more progressive Christian platforms. Because our political climate is insane and we need other voices in the conversation. If you guys want to see another video I did in this collaboration with Halidom, you can check out the video where I'm featured on Halidom's channel, where we talk about politics and spirituality and how they intertwine. So I'll put that in the card above if you guys are interested in that. So I'm really excited for this video. I'm also a bit nervous because it's going to be addressing something that doesn't usually get addressed very much, which is like anti-Catholicism and politics and the evangelical church and how it all intertwines and like how it's so freaking weird in America. I don't understand it. But it matters, and I feel like that I've seen a lot of Catholics who are more conservative freaking out because there's been statues of saints that have been taken down or like attacked by like Black Lives Matter, which I support Black Lives Matter, because those saints were a part of imperialist, colonist shit, just to put it blankly. But there is this fear that a lot of Catholics have that anti-Catholicism is coming back, or it's becoming more prevalent. And I think that they are misinterpreting the Black Lives Matter movement's message with the rise of anti-Catholicism. I believe that anti-Catholic bias exists, but I feel like that it's a different conversation than the conversation about racism. It's just a completely different subject, but for some reason the Catholic political sphere keeps wanting to put them together. I think that's because it's America, and America always has to do stupid shit like that. But I know that you guys came from a fundamentalist evangelical background, so I kind of wanted to hear what you guys experienced, hearing about Catholics, but also just why did you leave the fundamentalist church?
Yeah, so I think what's funny is when I think back to my childhood and interactions with Catholicism, it was always treated like it was almost another religion.
Yeah.
It's crazy, how many times I would hear people say, oh, and they joined a church, they became Christians because they converted away from Catholicism. I'm like, hold on, wait, aren't we? Yeah, Catholics are Christians, right? And it is a really weird kind of dynamic between, I think, a lot of particularly evangelicals and Catholics. I think we see some political alliances between conservative Catholics and conservative evangelicals, but you can kind of tell that none of them really like it.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like a political convenience, but yeah, I think there definitely is some sort of anti-Catholic sentiments within evangelicalism. I think there definitely is a lot of misinformation about Catholics and Catholicism within evangelical circles, and yeah, it can definitely be a problem. Like you said, I definitely don't think it's anywhere near the sort of oppression that Black Americans experience. But yeah, I think it's definitely a conversation worth having. And I think that within the progressive movement, there's not really a lot of explicit anti-Catholic, but there is a lot of anti-tradition, and Catholicism sort of gets wrapped up in that. Like you said, some of the statues that have come down because of their involvement in sort of colonial power and all that stuff. And yeah, I think that is a really interesting conversation to have about how can we make social progress, but also sort of deal with the traditions that we come out of, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that this conversation is so important to have because there's been a lot of framing lately that to be progressive is to be anti-Catholic. And something that I mentioned in our other video that we just did was that Pope Francis just released a new encyclical that was all about economic justice. And I would go as far as to say that you cannot fully live out what the Pope is calling you to live out and respect his papal authority without subscribing to progressive politics. I would go as far as to say that. And something that I really want to say to my Catholic viewers who are worried about anti-Catholicism and stuff, it's totally valid to be worried about the rise of anti-Catholicism, but it's like, as somebody who, I'm a progressive Catholic, and Halidom, they're progressive Christians, they have a progressive Christian platform. We are not out to ruin the church. We are not out to attack Catholics. We are here to just add, you know, kind of a new dialogue to the conversation while affirming that anti-Catholicism exists. And I think that we also need to remember that saints are not perfect. They are human beings. They're shaped by their times. And if we believe that somebody is truly a saint, we have to believe that they are in heaven and that God has revealed to them all of the sins that they committed and all of the things that they did. And because of that, if they were involved in something sinful like colonialization or colonization and imperialism and oppression, I think that those saints would be the first people to go and say, take that statue down.
Mm-hmm.
If we truly have to believe that they are saints, we have to believe that, yes, they are fallible. They're human beings like the rest of us. And we also have to believe that they would say, what I did was wrong, take that statue down. They have a right to be mad. And that's kind of how I reconcile it with the current anti-Catholicism dialogue that's going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, if you grew up evangelical, you probably grew up hearing a lot of weird things about Catholics. And I think there's a lot of ignorance, there's a lot of misinformation, and I think probably the best, one of the best things that, if you're in a place personally where you're like, oh man, I don't know what I think about Catholics, or I grew up hearing all these weird things about Catholics. Just talk to a Catholic. That's kind of that's a really easy thing that a lot of people could do to actually just learn something and learn about these people and learn about the rich history that's there, and you can really put it all into context that way without having to resort to feeling defensive, feeling angry, feeling all these negative emotions that really don't help anything. They don't really contribute to anything good. So,
and I think you realize that the reasons why people have these kind of anti-Catholic ideas don't actually really have anything to do with religion. Mm-hmm. It has more to do with cultural history and things like that, because that's what I discovered even maybe within the last few years, that Catholicism and Christianity aren't two different things, because that's what I was taught all of my life. And so learning that, talking to people who are Catholic, I realized I'm oh, we're all Christians. Okay. So what's the problem here? And I realized it doesn't have anything to do with necessarily the core tenets of what we believe.
And I think that that's important to talk about when we have interdenominational dialogue. I was kicked out of an evangelical group at my college campus that I was a part of for a year because I started the HippieCatholic, and I was under the impression that non-denominational, I mistook that for being interdenominational, and they're different. They're very different. Mm-hmm. And they kicked me out because I was LGBTQ affirming, and then that I was Catholic. And I would say that both of those things, being LGBTQ affirming and being Catholic, were looked upon with the same amount of scorn. I think that interdenominational dialogue is so important because we need to reunite the church in the idea that, we are, at the end of the day, we're all Christians, and we might have theological differences, but we all are Christians, and we all started from one place.
A lot of the false ideas that evangelicals have about Catholics don't really survive actual contact with Catholics. So like once you actually start that dialogue, your bad ideas can't really hold up to just that conversation taking place. And so, I mean, just that communication can go a long way. When you really focus solely on agreement, we all have to agree about ideas, and it's not about caring for other human beings as human beings. It's just about making sure that we all check the right theological boxes, and it just can be really unhealthy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's not about this community, which I think that's kind of where the non-denominational church came from. It's just kind of like, oh, we don't want to be tied down to having only one specific ideology, but then it kind of turned into its own denomination with its own set ideologies, and anybody who deviates from that in the slightest, especially Catholic people, they're like, nope, we're not doing that.
While I have been so nourished by the Catholic Church, I also see that the Catholic Church has problems, and there are valid criticisms that the Church can receive. And there's, the Church has not always been on the right side of history. Sometimes it has, sometimes it hasn't, and when it hasn't really badly.
Yeah.
Protestants
don't have a perfect record either. So.
Oh no. And that's just the impact that the Church has on society. It's either doing like amazing good or terrible destructive evil. And sometimes it's doing both at the same time. And that's what always makes it interesting. And so that's what it's always like with my channel. I'm kind of like, I am striving to share the Catholic faith with the world, and also share the world with the Church, because they need to be connected.
When we encounter sort of unfamiliar religious ideas, we just kind of assume like, oh, that's completely crazy. That sounds insane. But I think that one thing that we can do to sort of remedy that a little bit is that we can really take a good look at our own religious views and like try to find the things that would probably seem really, really strange to somebody who didn't grow up in that religion.
Okay, so I actually have another question. When we talk about in the Evangelical Church about baptism, I was always taught that like Catholics baptize babies or sprinkle babies, and we were always taught that doesn't count as a real baptism. Like you have to wait until they don't even give you a specific age, they just tell you that however that happened, it just doesn't count, and do it over again. So can you help me understand the history and the reasoning behind baptizing babies? I mean, because I wasn't baptized as a baby, but I was dedicated as a baby.
So when we say the Apostles' Creed, which the Catholic Church isn't the only church that says the Apostles' Creed, it's also the Episcopal Church says it, and I think some Lutheran churches will say it too.
Presbyterians do too.
Yeah, and so Presbyterians do. We confess one baptism. The baptism of babies, we kind of reference back to early church history where the apostles were anointing babies, were baptizing babies to initiate them into the church and to, saying that they are a part of the Christian church. Something that that kind of mirrors like the way Baptists and stuff think about baptism. Baptists like to have like baptism be like kind of later on in life when you kind of have like a proper understanding what you're doing. Catholics have a thing called confirmation, and you'll be educated in the faith like from like age 7 to about like age 14. And confirmation is basically you're confirming your baptismal vows, and you're saying that's when you have the choice to say, am I going to stay a Catholic or am I not?
It sounds like there's just more of like a communal aspect toward it. You know, you're being like brought into the church as opposed to sort of the more individualistic way of thinking about, you know, baptism in evangelical. So I think it's just kind of a perspective difference.
Well, yeah, because for us, like, we get told, like, this is you declaring to a watching world that you're following Jesus. That's what I was told right before I got dunked. From what you're saying, it sounds more like your community is welcoming you in and like kind of taking you under the wing.
That's why we always talk about like God's relationship to the church. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care about the individual, but we're always worried about how God is interacting with the systems, with our society, with our community, because we see ourselves not just as individuals that are separate from the world and from one another. We see ourselves interconnected, and that if one part of us is hurt, it really is like a body. If one part of us is hurt, then we all are sick. We all are hurt. I do think that it's interesting when we look at our political sphere, when we see the way the conservative politics have intermingled with the Catholic Church and with the evangelical churches. We cannot have this conversation without talking about abortion rights, because the Conservative Party of Ronald Reagan was very pro-choice because they were very constitutionalist. They were very, you know, they had that rugged individualism of that you do what you do, pro-property, pro-everything, you know. And so, of course, they'd be pro-choice. Like, that would make more sense. But I think that something that happened then was the Catholics do have a huge population in America, and the conservatives wanted to get the Catholic vote, so then they started to appeal to the Catholic pro-life ethic. That's what, like, I want to make a whole video about abortion and the abortion debate, because I think that pro-life and pro-choice in America, those two sides, I think that they both are arguing about different things, and I think that they both have valid things to offer. Like, it's a very, very gray issue.
I think one of the really dangerous things about creating a giant block of one-issue voters is that the entire rest of that person's, you know, philosophy and their, you know, everything else doesn't matter. They can be as cruel, they can be as greedy, they can be as dishonest, they can be, you know, just as just wantonly evil as they want. But because we're all one-issue voters, we're going to support that. And I think that is an idea that is really unhealthy for democracy, and I don't think it's a very Christian idea.
It's not moral. It's not a more moral way of thinking, and I think we're taught so much that it is. Like, that defines your morality, where you stand on abortion, and I just think that it's not fair. And it's incorrect. You have to address poverty, you have to address systematic racism, you have to address sexism, classism, all of those things to fix this one issue that a lot of people just want to stand on.
Yeah.
I think that it's a great place for us to kind of conclude our conversation. Please do your own research for yourselves, but I'm going to leave some resources below so you can read about transubstantiation and one-issue voting. What a concept.
Yeah.
But also, like, do you guys have any parting thoughts for my viewers that you'd like to share?
Yeah, just get out there and vote. Seriously, I'm really glad, Cassidy, you're going to be putting some resources down below, because I think it's really important, like you said, for people to be educated voters, and especially those of us that are Christians, to do our research and to vote with Christ in mind and with other people in mind. So.
Yeah, and you know, even though we're Protestants, I do have some good news. Charlotte's actually converting to Catholicism, so.
Yeah, she was convinced and converted.
She just loved everything you had to say, so that's good. Right? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but seriously, thank you so much, Cassidy, for having
you.
us. We had such a good time. I learned a ton.
Yep.
And I hope we get to connect again and have some more conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would love that. And please, everybody subscribe to Halidom's channel. They make amazing content. Like, You guys need to just be big. That's all I could say. But anyway, thank you so much, guys, for watching. I'm Cassidy. I'm the Hippie Catholic. God bless.